darling young one. I stumble along the sides of 12 misty mountains. I'm walking and crawling 6 crooked highways. I've stepped in the middle of 7 sad forests. I've been out in front of a dozen dead oceans. I've been 10,000 miles in the mouth of a graveyard. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's a hard rains are gonna fall. Oh, what did you see, my blue-eyed son? And what did you see, my darling young one? I saw a newborn baby with wild wolves all around it. I saw a highway of diamonds with nobody on it. I saw a black branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a room full of men with their hammers a-bleeding. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues were all broken. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard rains are gonna fall. Hear my blue-eyed son, and what did ye hear, my darling young one? I heard the sound of the thunder that roared out a warning. I heard the roar of a wave that could drown the whole world. I heard 100 drummers whose hands were blazing. I heard 10,000 whispering and nobody listening. I heard one person starve, I heard many people laughing. I heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. I heard the sounds of a clown who cried in the alley. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard rains are gonna fall. And who did he meet, my blue-eyed son? And who did he meet, my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a white man who walked a black dog. I met a young woman whose body was burning. I met a young girl, she gave me a rainbow. I met one man who was wounded in love. I met another man who was wounded in hatred. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard rains are gonna fall. And what'll you do now, my blue-eyed son? And what'll you do now, my darling young one? I'm going back out for the rain starts a-falling. I head for the depths of the deepest dark forest, where the people are many and their hands are all empty, where the pellets of poison are flooding their waters, where the home in the valley meets the damp, dirty prison, and the executioner's face is always well hidden, where the hunger is ugly, where souls are forgotten, where black is the color and none is the number, tell it and think it and speak it and breathe it, and reflect from the mountains so all souls can see it. Then I stand on the ocean until I start sinking. Then I'll know my song well before I start singing. And it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard, and it's hard rains are gonna fall.
Do you know who Mariah Carey is?
I do know who Mariah Carey is. Incredible talent. Beautiful from your perspective.
Well, I'm just...
behave yourself.
Just another girl to me, but I'm sure she's a beautiful girl.
Well, she's well known to have like this huge entourage of sort of security staff. I'm just wondering, do you have about 15 people with you?
Well, I really have more than that if you read Psalms 91. I got a bunch of angels with me. You just can't see them right now.
Good answer. I like it.
But I've got 2 girls with me, too.
Oh, okay.
Two great girls, my 2 daughters.
Some of my students are not going to be aware of what's meant by the term pro-life. Can you just give me a very sort of quick summary of what that means?
Everyone has the right to life. And so we as human beings might want to make some decisions and say, oh, well, if the family's too poor, maybe we should kill that baby. Or if the mother can't go to school, we should kill that baby. Or
so if, you're talking about abortion.
I'm talking about abortion right now, exactly. And with abortion, it's the ending of a life before the baby comes to what's called full term. But a person is a baby from the very beginning. And a lot of times, different people will say, oh, well, that's just a blob of tissue. You don't have to have that. Well, if it's a blob of tissue, leave it there. Nothing's going to happen. So why are you going to get surgery or use some chemicals that are going to hurt your body and hurt the blob of tissue if it's just that? And so certainly, you're not a blob of tissue, I'm not. And at one point, we were real tiny babies in our mom's stomachs.
My understanding is that there are 2 sort of extreme ends of this spectrum. One would refer to themselves as pro-choice, and one would be pro-life. How would you explain that difference?
In the 2 camps, as it were, the pro-life group says that a baby is a person from the very moment it's conceived, and pro-choice says it's not a baby until it's born, and they have some new legislation saying now it's not really a viable person even then, maybe for a couple of days or even more. And so pro-choice says that the baby's not a person, and therefore has no civil rights, and so the mother can decide what to do with it. We used to say, especially in U.S., that a woman had a right to choose what she does with her body, but we have effectively proven now that that little baby is not her body. And so my favorite answer to that is, yes, a woman has the right to choose what she does with her body, but the baby is not her body. I know that. I have 6 children, 6 living children, and when I held the very first one, he was not my body. So where is the lawyer for the baby? So pro-life would say that everyone has a right to live, and that it's an invasion of our civil rights if somebody kills us.
I notice as well your use of language. Am I right in thinking that there's the term embryo and fetus are used for something that's in the womb, which would later...
Right, and that's in the pro-choice movement. I will not use those words because
so you refer to it as a baby. You're saying it's a person, right?
It's a person
conception.
all the way through, yeah. Really, it's not an embryo, it's not a fetus. It's easier if you needed to make a decision as to whether or not you would keep a child, whether you were the child's father or mother. If you didn't call it a baby, it would be easier to kill it. But those are babies. And as a matter of fact, anybody who can see an ultrasound now, and if you've never seen an ultrasound, go online. There are graphic images, and the gentleman I work for, Father Frank Pavone at Priests for Life, and my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., happened to agree on a certain thing. Martin said that America will not reject racism until America sees racism. And so the media came in and took pictures of people being gunned down, beat with billy clubs, dogs jumping on them and everything. And America says, this is terrible, this cannot be. Father Frank has said we must show the images of how a baby looks when it's taken out of that womb by surgery or chemicals and torn into pieces. And so I'm sure you've seen some of those pictures of the little hands and little feet and little heads, and that's a sad image, but it's real. That's what happens when you get an abortion.
I'm aware a little of your own personal history with regard to this issue. Do you mind just briefly recounting some of your own story and how you came to this point? Because presumably there are people around who adopt certain political views and they don't really know what they're talking about. But I think your story is quite interesting. Do you mind recounting that for a few moments? My
mother and daddy were childhood sweethearts. And they were in college, they were engaged, going to get married, and they made a decision to become sexually active, excuse me using that phrase. And so at the time that they did, Mom was a freshman in college, and here I was, and at her school, whether you were married or not, you could not be pregnant. It was an all-girls school. Excuse me, my mother says, oh no, I don't want to have this baby and all this. And her mother went to my grandfather, Dr. Martin Luther King Sr., and says, Dr. King, Naomi's pregnant with your son's baby, and she doesn't want it, and she wants some money to get an abortion. And he says, oh, no, 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 we're not going to kill my grandbaby. I've seen her in a dream 3 years ago. It's a girl. And remember now, there was no ultrasound back there. And so they did not abort me, and I'm here today, 57 years old. Several years later, I got married. The year after Martin Luther King was killed. He was killed in 68. I got married in 69, and then my dad was killed in the same civil rights movement in 1969. But during that time, I had my first baby, my husband and I. And so then my doctor says, I went to the doctor to get a checkup. He says, you don't need another baby. Let's see. Does something called an involuntary D&C, which was really an abortion. I didn't ask for. And so I became post-abortive. I ended up with divorce and all of that, argumentative, not feeling well. My body was sick. My mind was sad. And so I ended up with that divorce. And in 1973, Roe versus Wade passed in the U.S., legalizing abortion there. And I was trying to reconcile with the child's dad. And here I am pregnant again and decided legally to abort a second child. And I would have aborted even another. But I went back to the Lord, and I went back and started talking to my family. I got pregnant a few years later, and I went to my granddaddy and the baby's daddy and said I want an abortion, and both of them said, that's my baby, that's my grandbaby. No. And so that's how I ended up with 2 abortions, and actually 1 miscarriage that was related to the abortions because of damage to my cervix and my breast system and all that. So that's my own story, and I had to repent and to admit that that was a bad mistake. I had helped to kill 2 people. And so that was a real sad time in my life. But today I'm healed and recovered, and there are wonderful programs like Silent No More Awareness and Rachel's Vineyard, which I participate in. And so today, I'm even here in the UK. I go all over the whole world saying that abortion hurts your body, it kills the baby, it makes your family sad, and so it's just not the best thing to do.
If you were going to talk to a student who is in their early teens, perhaps has just become sexually active, as someone who's had 2 abortions and now has this very sort of strong pro-life view, is there anything you could say to someone in that kind of worldview? Anything you would want to sort of share with them just on a kind of one-to-one heart level?
I would love to do that, and even my daughter is here in UK with me, both of my daughters, and my older daughter talks about abstinence and why, because of STD.
Can you just say what abstinence is? Sorry.
Abstinence abstinence means not to have sex if you're not married, and you and that person are only dedicated and devoted to each other sexually, and so therefore you're not sharing disease. You're free to have a family if you would like to, and all of that. And so what I say to college kids all the time, and high school children, and from a secular viewpoint, I say, you know, abortion is going to hurt your body. It's going to make you feel bad. It could give you breast cancer. It could give you cervical cancer, severe depression. It also takes the life of a person. And so just like you have the right to be alive, and you certainly wouldn't want me to come in with a gun and say, well, I don't like you, or I don't think that we can afford to feed you, or whatever, so you shouldn't live. Well, then you would want to afford that same right to any human being. And the baby in a womb is a human being. Also, any type of abortion during that whole period runs a risk to the body of the woman. It hurts the woman. It damages your mind, your body. And so those are practical points to consider, even if we never brought in the moral point that it's a human being and we're taking, you know, that into our own hands.
So if I'm reading you correctly with this, it's better for you to abstain or to refuse sex and to stay clear from that rather than risk damaging yourself.
That is true, and that's not necessarily so easy to do, because if you turn on the internet or the television, or you play your music nowadays, I mean, I think you almost can't buy a pencil or a tube of toothpaste without being advertised about be sexy. You know, so all that's in your face all of the time.
I mean, what's brushing your teeth got to do with being turned on? I mean,
nothing. It's just nothing. Absolutely.
I mean, I brush my teeth in a fairly normal way.
All the time. So, okay, so, you know, hey, think about it, think about it. So, certainly, people want to tell us that we don't have any self-control. For instance, I have a little challenge with my weight, and I have to pay attention to what I eat. And so everybody says, oh, you don't have self-control, so we're going to just make diet pills, and you don't have to worry about what you eat. Well, of course, I can decide to eat a lot or a little, or eat sensibly, and we can do that with everything, including sex. We really can.
The funny thing is that you've grown up right through what's referred to as the sexual revolution. I mean, the 1960s and 70s were a time where great restraint was thrown off. People said that the previous generations were very repressed. What's your kind of overview of that period?
The sexual revolution was absolutely a disaster. Smoke what you want, drink what you want, have sex with anybody you want to, and it doesn't matter. There are absolutely no consequences.
If I can interrupt, what would you say the consequences were then?
The high rate of sexually transmitted diseases, the high rate of broken relationships, the high rate of abortion all over the world. And
can I interrupt you on that?
You
say the broken relationships. Maybe I'm not thinking that clearly. How would one lead to the other?
Say you lived in the time that I did, sexual revolution, and you had sex with Betty, Susie, Brenda, and Jane. And then you decided you were going to marry Gloria. So you go and you marry Gloria, but you're looking for Betty's hair, Susie's money, Jane's legs, and the other girl's intellect. But you want your new wife to have everything they had in her. And she doesn't look like them. She doesn't sound like them. She doesn't feel like them. And so here you are with all what we call it is baggage, emotional baggage, and even physical baggage. So you carry all this baggage into a new relationship and think you're going to be happy with that one person. Same thing, you know, with guys, girls. If you've had a lot of partners, you're going to look for George's this and John's that and Billy's that. And then when poor Alexander comes along, he's not going to have all of that. And you're going to just be restless. And so even though he could be the best husband in the world, or she could be the best wife, you're going to sneak out and try to find that other part. And that's what that sexual revolution does. Not to mention, say you might get pregnant from one of them, and you didn't want that baby. And you had 2 or 3 abortions by the time you got ready to get married. And then your body's so damaged and your emotions, you just bring all this baggage into a new relationship. And that's what we call baggage, but it can be very damaging. Whereas if you don't do all of that, then you start with a fresh slate, and it's easier, it's better.
Something else that came to mind while you were talking about that was the one flesh saying in Genesis.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that part of what you're talking about?
Yeah, become one flesh. But if you're bonding with several people, you're going to have a mixed up mind, a mixed up soul. Your body's going to be confused because it can't compatibly blend with any one other to become one flesh. And so there's a big confusion. That's really true. Yes,
Could you just explain to me one or two aspects of your Christian worldview that would link to this pro-life sort of perspective?
Well, in the Christian worldview, God has loved everyone enough to give each person life and the right to have life, because Christ says that he came so that we could all have life and have it abundantly. And so abundant life means that I don't hurt you, you don't hurt me, and that I give you the right to live, you give me the right to live. And we love each other and not judge each other. Say you're from UK and I'm from United States.
Yeah.
But I don't judge your culture. I embrace that. I love you and I accept that. So then all of us as human beings have the opportunity to do the right thing and make good choices. We also as human beings might make some mistakes. And at the time that those mistakes are made, not to judge each other, but say, my brother, my sister, maybe that was something that hurt you. I'm so sorry. Let me love you. How can I love you? So not to judge you, but to love you. So,
if there is a judgment of some description, our choices will come back to us. How important is that when you're dealing with pro-life issues?
Well, everything has consequences. There's no way around it. I gave you the example before. If I eat 2 dozen cookies, and believe me, I could do that. When I get on the scale,
we should get together.
But you'll see me say sometimes I'll be offered all kinds of delicious things, and some of them I'll eat and some I won't. And I'll say it's not worth the calories. Right? It's not worth the calories. So, I mean, is that little moment of pleasure worth the possible abortion or STDs or broken relationship? You just have to stop for a minute and say, is it worth what may happen when this is all over?
What do you think happens when we die?
The promise of eternal life with the Lord through Jesus Christ and the Holy Spirit guides me to such a point that almost no matter what happens in life, I say I'm on a journey, and this one's going to end, and I've got a good one coming that's going to be very promising and full of joy forever. And so there's no reason that I can't get through anything that happens here, because I'm on my way to something better. So let me be as kind, as loving, as supportive, and nurturing and life-giving as I can, because I'm going somewhere that's really great.